Good morning and happy Saturday, everyone. Josh is Severe Weather. I'm a meteorologist in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm here to talk about what's going to be potentially a huge outbreak of severe weather lasting through the entire 3 day Memorial Day weekend, with potentially some violent tornadoes in the forecast again late today into this evening, especially in Oklahoma and Kansas, maybe North Texas, and severe weather threat continuing into the day tomorrow for much of the Mid-South and Ohio Valley, and even towards the East Coast and parts of the Southeast as we get to Memorial Day itself. So it's been a very active stretch of weather over the last month. I don't see that will be changing anytime soon. This video is going to break down some of the more specifics on timing of the weather, who could potentially see the worst of it, and then we'll also talk a little bit more about the tropics towards the end, which will start heating up here pretty soon. Here's a look at where we are looking at potentially the greatest risk for some violent tornadoes, EF3s and stronger, and it's centered over central Oklahoma and south central Kansas. I do think this area does warrant a high risk for severe weather. Probably the reason at this time of filming that hasn't happened yet is that there were some uncertainties in the forecast models, but they have trended kind of in the direction we don't want to see, unfortunately, and that is towards a likely outbreak here later today into this evening. Severe weather is going to continue tonight across parts of eastern Oklahoma and Kansas and Missouri, and likely tomorrow across the Ohio Valley, including Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, maybe West Virginia, which has had a pretty active spring, all the way down into the Tennessee Valley, and then stretching as we get to Memorial Day Monday to the Mid-Atlantic region, Carolinas, maybe the Southeast as well. Are probably our most active 3 days that we've seen yet this spring, and it's been a very active spring. You can see here we are up to 904 confirmed tornadoes after what was a quieter than last year winter. We have seen things ramping up since about the third week of April, and this trend, unfortunately, is not our friend. As we get to the rest of spring here, I expect that we will continue to see this line climbing pretty quickly, and then maybe it levels off somewhat. I do think we're probably going to end up somewhere in the 15 to 1600 count. If there is a stronger hurricane that hits the U.S., there could be some uncertainty here. But you'll see with every year, there have been kind of spikes indicating our bigger outbreaks. The one of probably the greatest memory for many of us in the Mid-South is back here in the mid and second part of April 2011. And then again in May 2011, where we had the Joplin tornado, which was 13 years ago on almost this date a few years ago. So unfortunately, these outbreaks are the ones that cause the numbers to spike, and you can see the spikes this year starting at about the third week of April and continuing at the end of April, and then more spikes in May, and then last week across portions of Iowa, some powerful tornadoes. Right now, the Storm Prediction Center has a massive area under a moderate risk for severe weather. This includes a good chunk of Oklahoma, where most of our population centers are, and a good chunk of Kansas as well, and even stretches all the way to about Joplin, Missouri, during the late night hours tonight. The expectation is that there will be several supercell type storms, especially early in the period. Some of these could produce massive baseball-sized hail, tornadoes, which could be EF3 or stronger. So we're talking winds over 150 miles per hour in those. And that will evolve into a widespread damaging wind event as we see that potential for hurricane force winds. I'm not going to call it an inland hurricane. I think that set a few people off. But for these parts of the country, with the kind of widespread strong winds that you're going to see, it may certainly feel that way for a while, but a derecho possible, at least, as we get into the second part of tonight into tomorrow. Here is our larger view of the severe weather outbreak. I'm sorry I cut you off in Nebraska here, but there's a slight risk into northeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa. You can see the enhanced risk extends along our dry line all the way into the big sky country of Texas. Slight risk all the way to the Metroplex. We do need to watch the area that is in a marginal risk today across the southeast. There are some areas in here that could see some severe weather, even though the risk isn't as high. There's also a risk for severe weather with thunderstorms that bubble up this afternoon across southeastern portions of Florida. But I think our big tornado risk is going to be confined to the plains, as you might expect this time of the year. Severe wind as well, Kansas into Missouri, with a 45% area indicating some powerful winds. Large hail this afternoon and evening across central Kansas all the way down to the big sky country of Texas, extending eastward into the Ozarks late in the night tonight. Tomorrow, right now, an enhanced risk is in place. There are some uncertainties on how this is going to evolve, but I do think, as bad as it looks tonight in the plains, we may see a pretty nasty outbreak again tomorrow, maybe in two waves, extending from central Missouri all the way into Kentucky, middle Tennessee, and East Tennessee, and as far north and east, perhaps as Dayton and Indianapolis, Indiana. I would be a little bit more concerned in Illinois, Missouri, and Southwest Indiana if we only had one wave, but we're going to have two waves. So that could certainly impact how things do eventually play out. Nonetheless, as much as I want to nail a forecast and get it completely right, I know that there's going to be some things that change here. Okay, that's just something we've got to expect. But nonetheless, it's going to affect everybody in this area, and I do think we will have some rough weather. It doesn't matter if you're in a slight risk or not. If you get a severe storm that damages your property and causes loss of life, it's severe. It doesn't matter what the ranking is. So just a point I wanted to make for you guys here. Tornado risk right now, 5%. I don't think tomorrow is going to be as active a tornado day as it is a wind day, but potentially a derecho that comes through along our boundary that sets up here. At least a long-lived convective system that will produce some severe wind with it. You can see the hatched area that extends from Missouri into Kansas and middle Tennessee. And hail, not as big a threat farther east as it is during the afternoon in the wave that forms behind it back in Missouri, but that extends all the way into northeast Texas, which I know I've cut off here. Looking farther east tomorrow, not expected to be as active on the eastern seaboard, but we do have a risk today around the Great Lakes. So I know I went backwards on you here. We do have a risk for some severe weather today, eastern Ohio, central and eastern PA, West Virginia, all the way to the eastern panhandle of West Virginia and northwestern parts of Maryland, and much of upstate New York is in this risk for severe weather today. Again, here's tomorrow. You can see not a completely quiet day, but not as busy as today. Unfortunately, though, on Memorial Day itself, with a lot of folks expecting to do outdoor things, we do have this risk of severe weather, and this area could certainly be adjusted or grow depending on how things play out. I think if it does grow, it's going to be farther west over eastern Tennessee, northeast Alabama, northern Georgia, upstate South Carolina, all the way into western PA. West Virginia has had a very rough spring. I do think, not tomorrow, but Monday, well, tomorrow as well, but Monday, if anything, this forecast has the potential to climb. So that's what I'll be watching for you guys here in the next couple of days. Here's the water vapor, and this kind of shows you where storms in the mid and upper levels are tracking. Massive circulation right here, right over the U.S.-Canadian border. Massive trough in Canada, or California. Goodness, I need more sleep. California, I know the difference, trust me. And you can see here, this southwesterly flow is speeding up ahead of this trough into Utah and Colorado. As the day wears on, this all shifts eastward and right into a wide open warm sector in here, and the instability grows. So we have ourselves the potential to see a pretty significant storm. This morning here on Saturday, we already do have some storms to keep an eye on. Heavy rain over northern Alabama, the lower Tennessee Valley. This will stretch east and southeastward, kind of a precursor to what's coming tomorrow. And with the heating of the day, we have to keep an eye on things in Florida. We also have to, again, watch for things in the Carolinas. Not a major event by Carolinas and Georgia standard, but again, kind of like the last couple of days, any storm that pops up in the right spot could produce some flooding rain, lots of lightning, strong winds, hail, even an outside chance for a tornado. So you can kind of see this, one trough here, one trough here. This is about as active as it gets here for late May across the United States. I guess if there's any good news, it's with all of this wind shear producing tornadoes, we're not seeing tropical activity close enough yet to the U.S. Here's a look at the upper level forecast. And this is going to show you winds up at about 20 to 30,000 feet. And you can see these troughs in place here. The one of concern is moving into West Texas and Oklahoma here this evening. Wind flow is up to about 80 to 85 miles per hour. You can see on the map showing about 75 knots. Miles per hour is about 15% higher. And as the night wears on, these winds continue to increase. At the onset of the storms, we will see more supercell type storms. Later in the night, we will see more of an organized cluster of storms that can accelerate as our wind flow picks up here over the Ozarks region. And as we head into the day tomorrow, this is about 11, 12 in the morning, or 12 at lunch tomorrow, we start to see piece number one here moving into the Tennessee Valley, and another piece dropping down into Kansas, which will come into play later in the day. So two waves for tomorrow. These are going to move eastward here. And then by Monday, Memorial Day, we're going to see action picking up on the eastern seaboard here in Appalachia in the morning and midday, and then towards the afternoon over the I-95 corridor as we get a pretty warm day out ahead of the system. CAPE is a storm fuel, convective available potential energy. It is climbing very quickly here in the plains today into this evening. It'll climb tomorrow across the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. And on the eastern seaboard, it will be climbing as well on Monday afternoon. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds on that, but we definitely have the storm fuel in place for some major weather. Here is a look at what the radar could look like. This is one of our convection allowing models. CAM is what that stands for. And you can see as we get through the morning, we're going to see showers and storms arcing south and eastward into Georgia, Alabama, into the Carolinas. As we get into this afternoon here, we are going to see big-time storms firing up along the dry line here in western and west central Oklahoma. These are going to quickly race eastward here, very fast wind shear, and then continue tonight into Missouri and also into Iowa and northeastern Kansas. Areas that have had a lot of severe weather lately are going to see it once again. As we get to tomorrow, this organized cluster expands eastward into Kentucky, Tennessee, maybe eastern Arkansas, and the Ohio River Valley states. And then it fades some as it moves into the Appalachians here tomorrow afternoon. Another wave of storms fires behind it. You can kind of see that. Here's piece number one right in here. And here's piece number two behind it from Arkansas, Northeast Texas, up into Illinois. This one needs to be watched as well. There will be some recovery between the two where things can become unstable. And with warmer temperatures brought on by sunshine, there will be more storm fuel in place behind it. Here's a look at our tornado parameters. I don't worry too much about the southern part of it, but take a look at the northern part. You can see how intense this model shows storms are going to be. It actually wipes things out, says there's not a chance there'll be anything after the first wave comes through and then maybe some more. But it's increasing tomorrow here across the Ohio Valley and into Arkansas. This is tomorrow afternoon, evening. And then we see it slowly diminishing as we get into Monday. Don't get too concerned with that, but it's just something I'm watching for you guys. Moisture content here is climbing. This is a very moist air mass in place here. You can see our dew points jumping up all the way into the 70s in southern Oklahoma, and maybe even pushing 80 around Dallas. That is how humid it's going to feel out there. And I watch where the surge happens because you can see kind of two features here. Let me pull my pen out so you guys can see. Feature number one is this big low pressure system with cold front that's moving through New Mexico and eastern Colorado. The other piece here is the dry line. There's kind of two pieces of it. Here's the dry line, and here's kind of what's going to be an outflow area with cooler, more stable air put there in place behind the storms that form ahead of it. As that advances, we need to watch things very closely across Kansas, Oklahoma, North Texas as well this evening. So a little bit of meteorology for you guys there. Now we'll show you the radar. This is what it could look like. This is just one model. I didn't even want to show it until I finally saw it agreeing with other models, but take a look at this evening. You can see storms going off kind of like a bomb here this evening around 6, 7 o'clock on our dry line. These will be kind of individual supercell type storms. They'll have potential to produce some incredible hail. They'll have the potential to produce rotating thunderstorms and an outside chance of a higher end tornado, which could be on the ground for more than an hour. And you can kind of see multiple storms being shown over southern Kansas, over much of central Oklahoma, and even along the Red River in Texas. We're also going to see some storms over eastern Nebraska and northwestern Missouri as the night wears on. These will arc into Iowa. And again, this is just one model. Don't get too complacent on it, but I just wanted to show you kind of the timing on things. And then as we head into the day tomorrow, we do get a break across this area, but more storms are going to fire up over portions of Missouri and southeast Iowa, and especially over Illinois. And towards the evening across Arkansas, there is some potential to see a few stronger storms as well. I'm going to zoom in on the states to kind of show you things in just a second. First, I want to show you updraft helicity, and this is where rotating storms are likely going to fire up. And you're going to see some pretty distinct paths here being modeled by this particular model from North Texas right on up into Kansas here. This is this evening, kind of a 3-hour stretch. There's also going to be some potential weather up in Nebraska that could be destructive as well. Maybe not a higher end tornado, but hail and strong winds. But you can see things are going to be alive and well here during the overnight hours. So if you're going to sleep around 4 in the morning in northeastern parts of Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas, and in Missouri, as well as western Iowa, definitely have a way of receiving warnings tonight, as storms could hit hard very quickly in the middle of the night. We still have some stuff to be concerned with tomorrow. We're going to get a lull, but here come more storms over Missouri, over Kansas, and especially over Illinois. And our greatest threat for severe weather is going to come during the evening hours in eastern parts of this area. I'm going to shift my map eastward in just a minute to talk about that. Real quick here, let's take a look at North Texas. Not going to be as bad as last night was, but take a look at this one particular cell that fires up near Wichita Falls and tracks along the Red River. We have to definitely watch that for a few hours. Anything that pops up in this area could go to town very quickly, unfortunately. Then we get a break. We'll see a few more showers and storms tomorrow, but most of that energy is lifting away from Texas. Unfortunately, in Oklahoma, you are probably going to be in ground zero tonight. Here's a look at potential development as soon as about 5 o'clock. Notice how quickly it goes off, pretty much like a bomb here, and multiple storms fire up. I don't know exactly how many tornado warnings we're going to see or if it's even going to look like this, but this entire area, the I-35 corridor, is likely under the gun. And anybody in Oklahoma, really, east of Elk City, needs to be watching this very carefully here tonight. Things are going to move out very quickly overnight. Tomorrow, we're going to get a break. There's a small chance of some weather in eastern Oklahoma, but most of the energy has been displaced farther off to the east. Kansas is also at risk here this evening. Here's a look at storms firing in southwestern Kansas around 6, 7 o'clock, and then a buildup of storms right through Wichita and Andover and those areas here mid-evening here tonight, and then extending into southeastern Kansas. More storms near the Nebraska border overnight tonight, and then spreading eastward towards Missouri by daybreak tomorrow morning. We'll get a little bit of a break, but we're going to see maybe some more severe weather tomorrow evening over eastern portions of Kansas. So that's what I'll be watching for you guys tomorrow evening. Posts will be made as necessary. Nebraska's had kind of a rough few weeks here. We're going to see more severe weather here tonight. Large hail possible, strong winds, maybe an outside chance for a tornado. It doesn't look as bad as last week, but it still looks pretty rough. Anybody in this area needs to be watching things. I think Omaha can get hit during the overnight hours, Lincoln right after midnight, more storms in the morning. So we do have some flood threat again on the corridor between Grand Island and Omaha, much like we saw last week. More storms tomorrow afternoon, and then things are going to quiet down in time for Memorial Day on Monday. Iowa has been hit so hard here recently. I don't think we see a repeat here tonight and tomorrow, but we do have to be alert for severe weather. You'll see things are going to move through in waves, but worst of it should be off to the south and east of you. Missouri, the show me state, is going to have some rough weather here. Later on tonight, we do have a risk for some tornadoes and massive hail. The first wave moves out. The second wave moves in here before daybreak and impacts northwestern Missouri. Very heavy rain along and north of I-70 is expected. We'll see more storms firing up tomorrow. Some places in this area could see over 6 inches of rain, but more importantly, the threat for tornadoes and big hail. As we continue into tomorrow night, unfortunately, things don't really get to quiet down until after midnight, and then it should be a quiet day on Memorial Day. Arkansas will have some rough weather moving out this morning. We will see more storms moving in from the west overnight tonight, maybe surviving to Little Rock around 4 or 5 in the morning Sunday, a break, and then more action around midday tomorrow over central and eastern Arkansas. This model shows the worst of it stays north and east of Arkansas. I don't necessarily trust that. My gut says you need to be on the lookout anyway, just in case something does drift down into this region tomorrow night. Here's a look at the rest of the lower Midwest, Mid-South here. Some rough weather moving through Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia this morning. You'll kind of see what's left of it along our boundary here is still going to be potentially severe this afternoon. Tomorrow, though, is our day to watch. So it'll actually be an area to watch tonight over West Virginia, but take a look at what's moving in tomorrow from the west. And this is, again, just one model, but a wide open area for multiple waves of severe weather to get going. This is going to be mid-afternoon, 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern time. Southern Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee, we definitely have to watch out, but take a look at more action moving in at night. Just looks like a day tomorrow where if you have anything planned outside, you're not going to be totally washed out, but you're also going to have potentially multiple watches and warnings throughout the day and especially throughout tomorrow evening across this region. And we do still have some potential on Memorial Day for the final wave to move through here, but this is where the uncertainty starts to grow, as you can tell. Here's a look at our potential rotating storms, and you can kind of see things move in here tomorrow afternoon, then a break, and then more of it tomorrow evening, and especially later tomorrow night. And then more storms potentially here for the day on Monday, especially over Ohio, Eastern Kentucky, and all the way down into the Eastern Tennessee Valley. In Illinois and Indiana, we're not out of the woods today for severe weather, but I think most of the day is quiet. Overnight tonight, keep an eye on things moving across the Mississippi River. We may have some severe weather in the morning tomorrow, approaching Chicago around lunchtime, approaching Lafayette, Champaign, and Peoria. But the worst weather is expected starting in the late afternoon hours and then continuing through the night. I don't want to just pause and show you every single time step here because this can change, but you can see it's going to be a very active day tomorrow, and tomorrow night's going to be rough as well. There will be tornado potential from this, but there will also be potentially widespread wind damage, depending on how things set up. Here's a look at Ohio, and we are going to see a few storms to watch in eastern Ohio and into the Pittsburgh area, Morgantown area, maybe Parkersburg. Another wave comes through here this evening. And then as we head into tomorrow, our severe weather threat starts climbing later in the afternoon and continuing through the night. And then even into Monday morning, some rough weather potential before yet the next wave moves in here during the afternoon on Monday. We're running out of states to show you guys. If I didn't show your state, trust me, that's a good thing, okay? Here's a look at the Tennessee Valley, Kentucky here, Bluegrass State. We are looking at some showers and storms today, some tomorrow morning, but then things start getting rough here in the afternoon. Sorry about that. If you take a look at an atmospheric sounding from just one model here, it is somewhat concerning here with the amount of wind shear that is expected. You can kind of see in the lower levels, with some sunlight, we get up close to 80 degrees. It's humid, but these lower level winds out of the south-southeast turning to southwesterly do cause some concern for some tornado potential from this first wave that moves through. This isn't even really the main event, but it is one to watch. The event behind it is more than likely going to be the widespread wind damage maker here that hits in the middle of the night. There will be some embedded tornado potential with this as well. And then we see yet more instability and more action in the afternoon on Monday. Here's a greater look at this entire region. We are running out of time, but today there'll be scattered showers and storms. A few of them could be severe. There could be wind damage. Don't be caught off guard. Same deal for tomorrow here in the east. But I think in the east, our bigger threat for severe weather will come on Monday. This model doesn't go past 2 p.m., but you can see wave number 1 across Pennsylvania and around the Chesapeake Bay region. Wave number 2 is going to move in across the mountains in the afternoon and probably fade some by the time it gets into the evening hours. Here's Memorial Day. This is 11 a.m. Eastern. This is the NAM model. This is 2 p.m., 5 p.m., 8 p.m., and 11 p.m. So it's very possible some of the severe weather doesn't happen because it's so late in the evening, but still be prepared for that. Hopefully we'll get through the day dry around the I-95 corridor until things start popping up later in the afternoon. So maybe you can get into the beach before things get a little bit too rough. In the southeast, we're going to have storms this morning to keep an eye on. Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, more flare-ups. Eastern and southeast Florida will have some storms later in the day. The eastern Carolinas will have some storms later in the day. And then as we head into tomorrow, we get a break in the morning compared to this morning. More storms over the northern part of the area. I think Florida is a lot quieter tomorrow. And then as we head towards Memorial Day, unfortunately, we may have a tail end severe weather outbreak here over parts of northern and central Alabama, Georgia, upstate South Carolina, southeast Tennessee, western North Carolina. This is 2 p.m., and that's as far as my model goes. So that's the severe weather part of this. We'll be pretty brief on the tropics. The Atlantic is busier, but nothing of organization to be concerned with at this point. Eastern Pacific, pretty quiet. All the action is over here on the other side of the world around the Philippines and in the Bay of Bengal. Here's the tropics. We do have this one system I've been watching for development. Just hasn't happened, but some rain just to the south and east of Bermuda. And then take a look at all of the action on the periphery of this ridge, getting very moist very early in the season. That, of course, is of concern. And as we head into June, I think we're going to see some activity pretty early in the season. Dry air impinging on the Northwest Caribbean, but very busy over South America. Puerto Rico is going to stay wet today action moving into the Windward Islands over the next few days. Could get pretty wet around Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados. Farther out into the ocean, nothing that we can see as organizing, but quite a bit of action here. This looks a little bit more like the end of June or early July, and the warm water temperatures have a lot to do with that. Fortunately, we're not yet in a phase where we're going to see storms popping off, but that may start to happen here in a couple of weeks. And the Eastern Pacific is relatively quiet, just a few flare-ups. Still very hot across Central America and southern Mexico as they continue to have an extremely hot late spring. You can see this moisture here continuing to build over the tropics here. Take a look at next week over the Caribbean, just very cloudy and very moist and very wet. Nothing's probably going to organize at this point through the end of the month of May. I thought maybe that could happen. Things have been delayed a little bit. Models were a little bit quick, and now they're slowing down. Again, not a shock to me. But I think what's of concern is if anybody's planning trips or vacations down here, you're going to see a lot of cloud cover and a lot of rain. Just not a great time of year to be down here, getting a very early start to what's going on here. And because it's so dry aloft in the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to be heating up, and the Gulf will continue to be very hot. We do have one depression to watch here near the Philippines. That is expected to move northeast, staying to the east of Japan. But we're going to have to keep an eye on that. And then this other system is maybe more of a concern in the Bay of Bengal, southeast of India, south of Bangladesh, southwest of Myanmar or Burma. You can see it's got a circulation with it that is expected to bring some incredible amounts of rain into far eastern India, into Bangladesh, into Myanmar. Places like Nagaland could see major flooding next week. I just wanted to bring that up for those of you who have family over that way. You can see elsewhere, we are heading towards La Nina, now almost 0.2 of a degree Celsius below the average, but lots of blue in place here indicating that cooling of the Eastern Pacific, which continues to expand. It has not changed my forecast. I still think we're heading towards a very active tropical season. And the Gulf of Mexico as a whole is at least a Celsius degree above the average and is actually trending, unfortunately, more in that direction. I appreciate y'all's time. Please be safe, everybody. And for Memorial Day, just want to let you guys know, I never say happy Memorial Day because it's a somber day for those who have lost loved ones who have served our country. But just know that you guys are in my thoughts and prayers. And I give all the glory to God who gives me the opportunity to get online here and share the weather with you guys. I thank everybody who's served our country, those who have passed on. Just know that you guys are not forgotten. You're gone, but you're not forgotten. And you all are in my thoughts. I give all the glory to God who just has blessed me every day. He is a great God. And I just want to know that I want you all to know that I can't do any of this without my love of God and his love for me. Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Everybody's got purpose. Everybody's got meaning. No matter what difficulties you are going through in life, God is there to help fight those battles for you. And ever since I turned my life over to him 11 years ago, I have been able to see that more and more every day. I pray that you do as well. But no matter what your situation is, just know that God loves you. Whether or not you choose to love him back is totally your choice, but God loves you. He sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for all of us so that those who have come forward and said, I will follow you, can live eternally with him in heaven. I will pray for you all, and I'll be praying for everybody in Storm's paths here over the next couple of days. I hope everybody has a safe weekend. See you soon. Take care.